There are seasons when it feels like God is taking too much from you. A door closes. A person leaves. A habit gets exposed. A version of your life begins to fall apart. And suddenly, you are standing in the middle of change, asking heaven a painful question. Our God, why are you removing this from me? Because when something leaves your life, it rarely feels holy at first. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like rejection. It feels like you're being emptied, while everyone else is being blessed. But what if this is not God punishing you? What if He is preparing you? What if He is removing what cannot go where you're going? What if the thing you are grieving today is the very thing that would have kept you bound tomorrow? What if the thing you wanted to keep could not survive the weight of your next season? And what if God, in His mercy, is not destroying your life, but pruning it? Jesus said in John 15 that every branch in Him that bears fruit, the Father prunes, so that it may bear more fruit. Notice that. He does not only prune dead branches, He prunes fruitful ones too. That means sometimes God removes things from your life, not because you failed, but because you are growing. Not because He is angry, but because He sees what is ahead. Not because your life is over, but because your future is too important to carry what used to define you. And this is where many people become discouraged. Because we often assume that if something mattered to us, if something once felt meaningful, if something comforted us, then surely God must want it to stay. But that is not always true. Not everything that is good for one season is meant for the next one. Some relationships were only for a chapter. Some mindsets helped you survive, but they cannot help you lead. Some comforts kept you afloat, but they will keep you small if you hold them too long. Some dreams were real, but they were too small for what God is now doing. And that is part of what makes spiritual growth so painful. Because sometimes God is not removing obviously evil things. Sometimes He is removing things that feel familiar, things that once made sense, things you built routines around, things that became part of your identity. Maybe He is removing your dependence on people always validating you. Maybe He is removing the version of you that needed to be admired to feel secure. Maybe He is exposing compromise that you kept calling normal. Maybe He is loosening your grip on a place, a title, a relationship, a backup plan, not because He enjoys your pain, but because your future cannot be built on what keeps you spiritually weak. Hebrews 12:1 says to lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily entangles us. Did you hear that? Not only sin, weight, because not everything that slows you down is sinful. Some things are simply too heavy, too distracting, too emotionally controlling, too connected to an old version of you. And if God is calling you into deeper peace, deeper obedience, deeper strength, then some things cannot come with you. Some people cannot go with you. Some habits cannot go with you. Some fears cannot go with you. Some coping mechanisms cannot go with you. Some identities cannot go with you. The version of you that survives by constant distraction cannot go where God is building holy focus. The version of you that needs everyone's approval cannot go where God is teaching you quiet confidence. The version of you that always runs back to comfort cannot go where God is calling you to courage. And yes, it hurts, because we get attached, attached to what feels predictable, attached to what helped us once, attached to what made us feel safe, even when that safety is too small for the life God has planned. Sometimes what you call safety, God calls limitation. Sometimes what you call personality, God calls a wound that still needs healing. Sometimes what you call "this is just who I am," God calls an old survival pattern that cannot remain. That is why loss can feel so personal. Because God is not just touching your surroundings. He is often touching your attachments. And attachments reveal us. They show us where we have leaned more on comfort than on trust, more on what we can control than on what God has spoken. Think about Abraham. Before promise expanded, comfort had to be left behind. Think about Joseph. Before purpose was revealed, his old life collapsed. Think about the disciples. Before they walked fully with Jesus, nets had to be dropped. Over and over in Scripture, God does not only call people forward, He calls them out of what is familiar, out of what is limiting, out of what they would have chosen to keep. And maybe that is where you are right now. Not abandoned, not forgotten, not destroyed, but being called out of old dependence, called out of false peace, called out of relationships that shrink your soul, called out of a version of life that cannot carry the weight of your assignment. Isaiah 43 says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." And that sounds beautiful until the former things are still in your hands, because you cannot fully receive the new thing while clinging tightly to the old one. Sometimes the new thing does not begin with addition. It begins with removal, with loosening, with pruning, with silence, with endings you did not ask for. But endings in God's hands are never random. He sees what you cannot see. He knows what will shape you and what will sabotage you. He knows what looks harmless now, but would become heavy later. He knows what your next season requires. So if something is being shaken, do not only ask, "Why is this leaving?" Also ask, "Lord, what are you protecting me from? Lord, what are you making room for? Lord, what part of me are you trying to free?" Because sometimes God removes what you thought you needed to show you what you actually need is Him. Sometimes He strips away lesser securities to build deeper trust. Sometimes He lets your hand empty so your heart can open. And I know, when you are in the middle of that kind of season, none of this feels easy. You miss what was. You replay what changed. You wonder whether you did something wrong. You question your timing. You question your worth. You question whether God is still near. But hear this gently tonight. God is not cruel in His pruning. He is careful. He is intentional. He is after fruit, freedom, and formation. He is after the kind of life that is lighter, cleaner, deeper, and more aligned with Him. So do not mistake this removal for rejection. Do not assume that because something is leaving, your life is falling apart. It may be coming into alignment. It may be getting lighter. It may be being prepared for something your current hands could not hold. Maybe you are not losing everything. Maybe God is teaching you what cannot remain. Maybe the reason this hurts is because it mattered. But the reason it is leaving may be because your calling matters more. So, release the door that closed. Release the identity that no longer fits. Release the relationship that kept pulling you backward. Release the habit that comforted you but weakened you. Release the old script. Release the old fear. Release what cannot go where God is taking you, because the future God has for you will require more freedom than attachment, more trust than control, more surrender than grasping. And one day, you may look back at what left and thank God it did. Not because it did not hurt, but because it could not go with the person He was shaping you to become. So if you are grieving what is leaving right now, do not grieve without hope. Let God finish the work. Let Him prune. Let Him cleanse. Let Him lighten what your soul was never meant to carry forever. Because God may be removing what cannot go where you're going. And what feels like loss today may be mercy in disguise. If this spoke to your heart, stay close to God in this season. Do not run back to what He is asking you to release. And if you need this reminder again, save this message and let it strengthen you when letting go feels hard. Anchor line. Some things are not leaving because your life is ending. They are leaving because your future cannot carry them.